many times has this happened to you? Tired of chairs that don't have your back? Now there's a better way. Introducing the SMITE Maxonomic Chair, perfect for any occasion. Sitting, conversation starter. Sitting, game night with friends. Sitting, high-powered business meetings. Sitting, standing, sitting. Maxonomic chairs are complete with full positional settings, height adjustment, and rotation settings. There's no wrong way to sit, as long as it's Maxonomic.
I'm Maxine Nomic, owner and operator of Maxonomic. Trust me, we've got your back.
Maxonomic is a paid effort, cannot be trusted. Don't delay. Order your customizable Maxonomic chair today. Rest assured, this chair has your name on it. Operators are not standing by. Welcome back to the SBL. You know, Gore, I have been feeling particularly comfortable over this last year and a half or so, and I gotta think that's just related to the Maxonomic that we have been comfortably sitting in. Now, we're happy to have you back here. Gore and I are still going to be the ones breaking things down for you here on the desk. Almost fell asleep. It's so comfortable, huh, Gore? We've got Leviathans versus Titans for this very first one here. I expect this to be a really good set, Gore. What are your thoughts on what we can expect, and maybe even some closing thoughts on the last set? A big win there for the Valkyries.
Yeah, so if the Valkyries are going to start us off with a little bit of a surprise, at least caster-wide surprise, maybe not game-wide surprise, then I'm interested to see what the Titans have in store for us, because the Titans didn't really look too great in their set last week. Granted, I would also argue they had a very difficult set. I don't think anybody expected the Kings to come out and kick the door down the way they did in the first set last week. So they had I want to say the double displeasure. Not only were they the first team to lose this season, but they had to do it in a team that people weren't sure about coming into this season. So it was kind of a double whammy there for the Titans. I want to see what they've done to kind of revamp coming into this. I don't think this is an easy team to beat. We saw that last week when the Bolts had to face the Leviathans. We're going to get a little more of a glance on the Leviathans this set, as well as a little bit later in the week when they play the Kings. But there's so much to dismantle, and I think that the Titans here are going to have a lot more to work for in order to get there, because they're still trying to get the pieces together, right? You get Paul on this team, and you have him looking really good, but you're going to have to go up against the kind of 3v3 core that is very comfortable in Leviathans. The one that I think kind of stood out the most last time, Wrong Yu looked really, really solid, as well as the fact that, I mean, Yarkor, I have to give him credit. I didn't know what this man was going to look like in the duo lane, and yet they were able to come through and really look solid. Yarkor surprising me, I think, more than anything, with the fact that his transition was smooth and seamless.
It was. I mean, we've heard from the boys on the team that Yarkor thought, hey, I can just go to just about any role. It's not a problem. I can do it. And that's exactly what he did. And I think it is made easier by how good Wrong Yu is here in the support role. Walls like that are tough to always give as much credit as they deserve, that perfectly save his teammates and are excellently timed. And I said earlier in the waiting room, and I'll say it again here, Gore, I think they have one of the best frontline duos in the league, maybe even second best when they're hitting on all cylinders of Julio and Wrong Yu. I think this team's going to be really, really tough to beat, especially for the Titans, who still might not have everything 100% clicking.
Yeah, that's where things are really going to come into question here. When you look at what Yarkor has been able to do and the control he's been able to have, he has been on point with this transition over into the carries, and like you said, maybe made easier. Panatom had a really good week. Like, I have to bring it up, Panatom was a sleeper. Like, I didn't think anything of his performance. He had the most kills, or the highest KDA on his team, and one of the highest in the league. It's just a 17 flat out, and that blew my mind. The only person, at least that I can at a glance, that had higher than him was Fine-OK at 28.5. I think the Dragons had a couple that were up there, but Panatom was insanely good. I think this is going to be a really difficult team to take over.
That's a good point, Gore. I think we could stop and talk about just about any player on this Leviathans roster and have a lot to say. But the player that I want to talk to and hear a little bit about is Wrong Yu, who I did indeed talk to a little bit earlier to see how he's feeling coming into this upcoming match. Well, I am here with Wrong Yu, support for the Leviathans. And first things first here, Wrong Yu, you've already got a whole set under your guys' belt with this kind of new adjustment for the team. Yarkor and ADC Julio with you all in solo. How are you feeling about this version of the team? Is it even stronger than the very strong Sanguine team from last year? How do you feel about it?
Personally, I feel pretty confident with this team. It's obviously just the first week, but I just joined playing with this guy every day in scrims or every weekend of SPL, so I have a lot of hope in this new roster.
And I think you should, right? I mean, so far you guys are looking pretty good. You all play the Titans here coming up, though, and I think this is going to be a pretty important test for you all. Obviously, sort of a super team that got off to a bit of a slow start. How strong do you think the Titans are, and how are you all prepping for them specifically?
I think every team in the SPL is good. They just need to figure out their own pieces, and there will be a huge competition for everyone. And I think the preparation for them, it will be just kind of the same. Just focus on our plan, maybe some cheesy stuff, maybe, who knows? But yeah.
Well, you guys have a reputation as a late-game team, but I don't know if that's entirely true. You all have been very willing when there's opportunities in the early game to take them. How do you guys feel about that read on your team? Do you think of yourselves as late game, or will you just take every opportunity that's there?
Yeah, I think we just fight better as a team, maybe, but now I think we have a better like side laners. So I think we just take like the best opportunity we have, and if it goes well, well.
You'll go there. I like it, Rongi. Thanks, man, for taking some time to talk to me, and good luck in this match here against the Titans.
Thank you.
Wrong you and the Leviathans squad confident as ever. You can always expect that from this team. Really no difference there from the young Wrong you, who is always going to be bringing that confidence. Gore, what were kind of your thoughts there? I mean, we really should shift our focus onto the Titans here, but Wrong you and the boys confident. Should they be that confident? I know the Titans looked like they were struggling in that first week, but this is a team with too much talent. They're not going to struggle forever.
Yeah, they're not going to struggle forever, but I don't know that this week is going to be the week they bounce back and make that big difference, right? And that's just because, again, so you're supplanting a jungle into a mid into this Titans roster. The strongest portions, I would argue, for the Leviathans, if they get their comfort picks, I have to throw that out there because Panatom is sometimes a wild card out there, they are in the jungle, in the mid, in the support role. And while I think that the Titans have formidable players across all of their roster, I think it's how they work together that's going to be an issue, whereas the Leviathans, they've had that synergy. I mean, they had it 2 years ago when we got to see them make a couple of interesting runs. They had it last year when we got to see them make that run. The only change they made was flopping Yarkor to the other side of the map, and it still seems to work out pretty well for him. And so coming into this, I think that this is going to be a game that is less of a question about whether or not your players are fantastic. We know all members of the Titans are perfectly capable. I mean, Cyclone Spin has 2 competitive pentas under his belt. Paul just won a world championship. And the same thing for Scary D. Like, you can't glance over those facts, but you do have to pay attention to how well they'll play together. And right now, I think the Leviathans have that edge up on everybody, similar to the Dragons. They just, because they've already spent that time working out all the kinks, they know exactly how everybody plays, save for maybe Julio, but he seemed to fit in pretty well last week.
He did, and for me, I think the Titans kind of have to start in the jungle, right, and make sure they get Mass comfortable, because it didn't seem like that was the case for this team last week. And so if that's something they could adjust kind of on the fly, then we'll need to see it. Otherwise, probably going to end up taking a little bit of time before he's up to that same level. But this team has so much talent, right? I mean, you could say that Cyclone, Benji, Paul, Aurora, they're all essentially best in role depending on the day, depending on the time when that team is clicking the way that we know that they can. So once they're able to get that going, I think the team's going to look a lot better than we're seeing them look right now. Gore, but it could take a while. This is a team that's not looking great from what we saw most recently, and hasn't sounded all that confident when we've gotten a chance to talk to them. So they're going to need a little bit of time to get the team where they want to be, and then I think they'll have a shot to start turning things around. And maybe it's got to start with Paul, right? Maybe it's got to start with him and Mass finding that jungle mid synergy.
This was a team when they formed together that is not necessarily formed for, I think, its immediate kickoffs. Although we thought there were going to be, I thought at least personally, that there were going to be a lot of immediate benefits having 3 members of one team, 2 members of another. Usually they can fit together pretty well, but I think we got a glimpse of it last week, them saying, I think Aggro even threw it out there, that the shot calling isn't necessarily as present on this team as you would really like or need for them to be able to find success. So that's something that they're definitely going to have to work on moving forward. This is a team, though, that I foresee making a lot of runs during any LAN events, any world events. Like, runs like that are going to be where the Titans are the popping off moments. It doesn't matter for the regular season, at least in their eyes, as long as they can make it to those lands and have that chance to be able to win.
Well, that's got to be the hope for this Titans roster. They can pull it out when they need to. And I talked to Paul to see if that was indeed the case. Go ahead and take a listen to my interview with Paul. All right, I have Paul, mid laner for the Titans, here with me. And Paul, we got to talk a little bit about last week. It's just one game. Obviously, no reason to panic or anything, but what was you all's read on kind of what happened there last weekend and how you all plan on improving here this weekend and trying to find some wins?
Our last game, we really didn't know what we were doing. Like, we're still trying to mesh together right now. We're trying to figure out how to play the game well together, and we're just trying to build up some synergy. So last week we had literally 0, but our practice has been a bit better this week.
Sure.
So maybe these sets will be a bit better, but we're still working on it.
Who's that primary voice for you guys over there on that team, Paul, that you guys are kind of rallying behind, or is there not that primary voice?
I don't know. On my last teams, we all usually called stuff, but I mean Zap called a bit more than everyone else, but on this team it's pretty much the same. Like, we're all just calling stuff. We don't really have one big voice. So yeah, we all just kind of work on it.
Yeah, I get that, man. Well, you all are going up against the Leviathans now, who had a great week 1. This is that new version of the Sanguine roster from last year. When you all come into this set, is there any kind of different prep that you're doing, or any expectations you have for that squad in particular? Or, like you said, are you all just trying to find your own footing?
I think we're just gonna focus on ourselves rather than. Well, we're obviously gonna look at their picks and bans and stuff, but
Sure.
It's not more about counter picking and kind of sabotaging their draft. We want to work on ourselves a bit.
Well, this team is going to play likely for the late. Is that a point in the game where, even this early in this roster's life, you all feel pretty comfortable in that late game? Or do you think maybe you want to try and start things off a little bit sooner against the squad?
Well, since we don't have that much synergy yet, I mean, I guess our late game's not going to be as good. But I think it's good to practice. I'm not too sure, to be honest, what we're going to do right now, but
Sure.
we definitely just want to get things on track to be better in the long run.
All right, Paul, it is genuinely always great to get some insight from you, my man. Thank you for telling me a little bit about the team, and good luck in this match. I think it's going to be a good one.
Thank you.
Well, Paul in particular is always good to get a little bit of an insight into the mindset, but sounds, at least from him, like maybe the Titans don't have everything quite where they wanted. We'll get our first look, though, as we move into the picks and bans for game number 1 of what promises to be a good set. The Titans are in that first pick spot there, Goro, and I pose to Paul, don't think the Leviathans are likely to sort of skew towards the late game here. What's your game plan? Is that your read for this team as well here, and that the Titans need to be ready for it?
Yeah, I mean, look at it. It's the way that we saw pretty much the first half of last year go. It's what we saw out of last week's games as well. The Leviathans, a 5,000 gold deficit for them going into a 20-minute game is still technically a lead sometimes, right? It's just moments like that where they're able to turn it around. I'm worried for the Titans because Paul's answer didn't seem like they were really prepared for a late-game brawl against the Leviathan. So I think you have to win this one pretty quickly, similar to what we saw teams like the Dragons do last year when trying to deal with the likes of the Leviathans. Or you're going to have to buckle down and hope that your late game is solid, because otherwise they're going to be able to pull apart. This is going to be a big jungle matchup, I think a big mid matchup. Duo, I mean, so everybody at this point I think is going to be heavily involved in finding the success, and that's just because the Leviathans play as a 5-man group. Their separate entities are okay, but when they combine, much like Voltron, they become something better. Much like the Power Rangers, they just become better in the middle of everything, and I think that's something the Titans are going to have to figure out how to overcome.
Well, so far they're looking to overcome it with a lot of Guardian bans. They've banned Sobek and Amir. The Leviathans have already banned the Athena. You were talking earlier, though, about how when Panatom is able to get onto a really comfortable pick into the jungle, it can elevate his play. Elevates everyone's play, but it does seem like Panatom in particular could be a real rhythm sort of player. Anything in particular you like to see in his hands, or do you just want to see Leviathans make sure they get him something in the top 3 here?
If I remember correctly, Susano was banned a few times against them last week. I wouldn't mind seeing him go to that. We know that's a comfort pick overall. We saw a lot of good Thor play as well. But last week, there was a little bit of focus. I think he played a set game, and then he played a Circuit game. Nothing really out of the ordinary, nothing crazy at least at that, right? But still all looking good. They were able to win it. They went Heimdall both times. There's some interesting pickups for the Leviathans, but I think the jungle as much as I like to give Panatom a hard time, might be way more flexible than I think I give credit for. In my mind, he still has a couple of, not necessarily one tricks, but like a very niche style of play. That Susanoo, that Thor definitely stand out because of what we've seen Panatom do in the past, but if he can make a set work, that's just as fine by me.
There's still a lot of good stuff available, though, because 5 bans toward the Guardian class, all 6 to frontline, once you're counting the Warrior Guan Yu. So Heimdall available, Apollo still available in that role, Chernobog, Set still very much available in the jungle if the Leviathans want to go ahead and grab that. Scylla still out there, too, has become a mainstay in that mid lane. Giannis, there's a ton of stuff still available, and always will be, because there's so much that's strong in Smite right now. But because of these bans in particular, I expect these carries to be well equipped, as it's Heimdall on her. And I think, to no one's surprise, that Set selected. Does that satisfy Panatom getting a pretty good jungler there for you?
Yeah, looked good on it last week. I'll give him credit. I think he's going to look good on it this week, too. I think it's going to be, again, a solid set for him. I'm interested to see when he starts getting invested in the game, because we've been seeing Set, at least last year we got used to seeing him around level 6, was when that, like, start to well, what felt like maybe the finish, depending on how the game would go, would start for him. Once he has that ult and gets one more point, his damage really starts to pop off. I think it depends heavily on what Paul goes mid here for the Titans. There's a lot of flexibility over there, and if he's something too safe, Set might not be able to really take advantage of that. Of course, Panatom, and again, the rest of the Leviathans aren't worried about the ganks, and they're more worried about the team fight, and I think Set's damage is still going to be solid enough then to make it work.
Well, the Titans, recognizing that there are 6 bans to the front line, prioritize theirs, Ares and Kukulkan locked in. But there are not a lot of scarier player god combinations out there than Julio and Tyr. And it's starting to feel like the Leviathans are kind of just getting everything they want here with these first 3 picks. Not to say the Titans are struggling with their top 3, but those are not typically, the Ares and Kukulkan, the highest valued picks. No, Kukulkan is plenty strong in this whole lane right now. No complaints there.
Yeah.
But Julio on Tyr, man, that's frightening.
Yeah, this is something I'm really excited to see. Like, to the point where Julio's Tyr is maybe one of the most target banned things I've gotten to see. Like, and there's a lot of target banned things. I just think Julio, through years of SCC play, whether it was with the Poppies, last year with Belt Slap, here I assume with the Leviathan's going to continue it up. Tyr is good under his hands, and I really am excited to watch this one because I think it's going to open up a lot of doors that I wouldn't say necessarily aren't open otherwise. I think they played like the Kukulkan last week, as well as a couple of other really strong picks. Let's see, they had the Kukulkan picked up for him, as well as a King Arthur. Julio got a triple kill at one point, like obviously adjusting really well. If he's already set that standard for himself, this Tyr, I want to know what it can do. It's going to be great.
Listen, you banned away the Raijin to try and limit what Shinta might get to play, but listen, when Scylla still falls into his hands, did you really ban anything at all? A truly excellent draft for the Leviathans through these top 4 picks. Exactly, I think, on paper, what they would want to take into the game. Just a question of what Rongyu will end up playing. And I want to make sure that I'm not mislabeling this draft for the Titans. Benji on Kukulkan, that should evoke fear similarly to Julio on Tyr. That's going to be a great matchup over there in solo. But Zhonghui and Thor, they're really got to make these picks work that are a little bit non-traditional, because I think they're in some trouble. Not a lot of people playing Thor or Zhonghui right now. Are you sold on the value of those 2 picks?
Look, man, how long was it? I mean, months, if not, like, almost all the way through the year before we got to see Zhonghui. Like, that one's throwing me a little bit for a loop. I think he's going to feel a little bit better. I've heard more rumblings about Zhonghui this year, but I don't know how he stands up to Scylla. Like, the thing is when I look at the Leviathans roster, I am invoked with fear, right? Terra is maybe the weakest thing on that entire draft, and by maybe, I mean absolutely. Like, Terra is the weakest thing, but there's not a lot of Guardians left, so you gotta go somewhere. Whereas I know that Aurora's Ares, I know that Heimdall, I know that Kukulkan are going to be good. The jungle going to Scary D there for Thor is going to be the question mark. Coin flip, is he going to be more present than what we saw, and how is he going to stand up to Panatom on the other side? And Zhonghui's carry potential, not Paul's carry potential, but Zhonghui himself, the god, is what is maybe losing me a little bit here. I want to know what he's going to do. I'm excited to watch this. It gets me amped, I guess is the best term for it. I just want to know how the Zhonghui is going to perform. I know the Leviathans are going to look good. I know that their late game is going to be solid, but the Titans are giving me some elements of surprise to it, and that's what makes the right now the SBL so tantalizing. There's just been so many different god picks coming out that it is throwing me for a loop, and Zhonghui, he's going to be one of them. His team fight combos with Ares and Kukulkan theoretically are going to be really good. This could end up being a really solid game for the Titans.
Yes, I think this draft puts quite a bit of pressure onto Aurora, though, as maybe that primary beats burner so that Thor can do it safely. But we'll end up seeing how they plan on executing it. It's Dolson and Mifflin standing by to take us into game number 1.
Well, it's time for the Titans to get their season going here. Leviathans off to a strong start. Game number 1 about to kick off. It is Dolson, it is Mifflin, it is Doug. For game 1, Mifflin, it seems like these two drafts are conventional on one side, unconventional on the other side. And maybe the unconventional is what makes it work here for the Titans. We'll take a quick pause before we jump into game. Miff, what are your thoughts here? Two drafts. The Leviathans get this tier list, top to bottom. You get the On-Her, you get the Set, you get the Scylla. You get exactly what you want. On the other side, you get the Zhang-Kui, you get the Thor, you get the Ares. Two kind of different mindsets going into game 1.
I think that the devs kind of hit it off on P's and B's incredibly well. Gormizer in particular, he said, it depends, if you're a Titans fan, how well Scary D is able to perform on this Thor, because Thor is going to be the primary beads burning tool that they have to set up for this Ares. If he's not landing dunks consistently, if he isn't finding these walls that force out defensive relics, all of a sudden this Ares will never have a fantastic ultimate. It will never really find the opportunity to turn around one of these team fights. But Dave, I can't believe you are going to come to me and say, can you believe that the Leviathans picked a tier list draft? Bro, come on. That's their MO, man. You got to toss me a harder question than that.
First of all, wait, did I say can you believe it? I don't remember. Maybe I did say that. I'm not going to defend myself against
you gaslit.
You're going to come over here and now throw that towards me? Unbelievable, Mifflin. We're starting this off on the entirely wrong foot. Let me just bring up some SPL stats from you back in the day or something. I gotta start to dig up some dirt on you to get back here. Also, side note, happy National Adopt a Shelter Pet Day to you and Ellie over there. I actually found out that is today. I know it's a couple days late, but yeah, if you guys at home don't know, Mifflin just brought home a sweet shelter pet in Ellie. So happy National Adopt a Shelter Pet Day. But let's reroute ourselves back in some analysis here, Mifflin. Let's stick with that Thor pick for now. We'll talk about Zhang-Kui a little bit once we get into game. Looking at Scary D, solo laner turned jungler, needs to get that momentum going. Is that the type of pick that you want to go with? I mean, why even continue there? Introduce us to Ellie here, why don't you, Miff?
Yeah, this is Ellie, and she's also equally pumped about this Scary D Thor pick. Seems like she really wants down is what it is. I think she's hungry. Scary D, I think, has plenty of experience playing Thor because he played it last split inside of the Soul Lane. He was able to utilize that rotation power, and he really helped his team in that 3v3. So I think falling back to the Thor here is really going to play to his strengths. It's really where he's going to be able to find his pacing in the jungle. It should be just a comfort pick for him.
Right, you hope so. He'll start over on the red buff here with Zhang-Kui. It's going to be a solo blue start. Then for Benji, Julio's going to do the same. But the speed buff start on for Panatom. So we'll see if any of that jungle pathing leans into anything else here in the early game. But Paul on the Zhang-Kui, we can only avoid it for so long here, Mifflin. Not a pick I expected to see here today or any time in the near future. Paul is going to start off, and it's not going to be the Vampiric Shroud. Instead, Conduit Gem will be the start item for Paul.
It will be. Zhang-Kui is in an interesting spot right now because itemization changes to the mages means that he should be able to get a lot of power online quickly, but it's not the type of god style that I associate with Paul. When I think of Paul, I think of ranged artillery strike damage, one-shot potential, the ability to change a fight with a single ability. Right. And Zhang-Kui can change a fight, but it's not quickly. He goes into the exercise spirits, he drops the ultimate, and then now he's a walking no-play zone. He says, alright, don't fight around me, or you're going to be consistently taking damage. I'm also a CC center for my team. But it doesn't necessarily lend me too much confidence for the Tartarus Titans' ability to fight in the late game. If the Leviathans can properly play around this Zhang-Kui ultimate, once it's down, the Titans are going to have a very hard time finishing off their kills.
I have to see what direction Paul goes in his build as well. That's always interesting to follow with Zhang-Kui. So something we'll keep our pulse on here. Then Beads Burning was the big conversation that the desk was having as well with Ares on your team, you're always going to want the beads to be down. Early engage here, up down from Yarkor, finds the knock-up on a Cyclone Spin. Wrong you working his way in there as well. Bifrost Crystal goes down, but that would send Cyclone Spin headed in the wrong direction. Already early lane pressure here. Cyclone Spin, Aurora, both down to half HP.
It's one of the downsides of having Heimdall pick up the Bifrost in that first slot. Doesn't have the knock-up or the slow available to him. Panatom waiting for the Titans to take one step forward. Doesn't look like they're going to do it this time. So instead, going to go back to base, likely finish up those boots.
Wait a second. No, that's so unfortunate. The purple buff. Literally 2 seconds from Panatom backing there. Unfortunate timing. That's a big win here for the Tartarus Titans duo lane. Purple buff gets dropped down. Cyclone Spin will pick that up. Let's see what Scary D has in store here. Looking for a blue buff invade. Julio, or not an invade, it's his own side of the jungle. I don't know why. The way his pathing looked was a little bit menacing there. So he'll secure his own blue buff. Right, it was, I know he's just looking around like he was up to something, but takes his own blue buff. Will send Julio and Benji right back to lane. Blue buffs in towed. Julio on this tier, certainly something that people at home should get excited about. This pick with this player brings a lot of potential to this match.
Yeah, Julio been picking this tier in the SEC for a long time now, trying to transition it to that SPL level of play, and I think he's certainly got the capacity for it here. Phenomenal backline disruption, CC immunity, and also seems like some pretty good solo potential.
Julio has his ultimate, but he's going to wait for Benji to go into his ultimate, and then the roar from Benji will keep him alive. Julio has the blue buff. Benji underneath his own tier 1 tower. Let's see if Julio tries to speed push this wave. Benji is likely just going to be able to absorb this wave. He's done enough healing now that he's going to survive, but talk about solo potential. This Bluestone tier feeling good. 3.5, 4 minutes into the game.
Dealing immense damage and sustained a boot. Looked like to me that Julio was waiting for the shield to fall off from the Rage transformation to find that ultimate to maybe secure the kill. The potions were ticking through for Benji, so he does survive the ultimate itself and uses that roar to CC immune the slow. Small micro interactions like that can change the face of the game, kind of like Panatom working his way into duo.
Panatom not here for the buff, but he's here for the gank, and he's here for first blood. Aurora stun, no chance. But Scary D on the counter gank, double stun on the backside, but there's just not enough damage yet from Cyclone Spin to turn around the fight. It's going to be the Leviathan striking blood first.
Panatom looked like he wanted to go back in there, jumps forward, realizes out of mana, not going to be able to stick that one too much longer. Scary D, though, already, I think that is an indicator that he's looking a lot more comfortable on this Thor, getting involved early for the counter gank inside the duo lane. Unfortunately, though, not quite enough damage to turn that one around. Rongyu's ultimate gives him that tick heal, just puts him right over that kill threshold. Unfortunate for the jungler on the side of the Titans.
And obviously you'd like Scary D to be engaging on a lot of these fights, starting off these fights with that Anvil of Dawn. Also a fantastic utility tool for re-engaging, counter-engaging, if you know that Panatom is going to be there. Now Paul, a little immobile on the Zhong Kui, will use his ultimate, sustain up just a little bit throughout the gank there in the mid lane. Panatom and Shinto combining for a good chunk of damage onto the Zhong Kui. Both ultimates traded out, but Paul will live to fight another day. What do you think this power curve starts to look like for the Zhong Kui? For those who aren't as familiar with the scaling, I'll pause, see what happens to Panatom here. Aurora right in to the wall from Rongyu. Could Ares fall for the second time? Crush nearly. My man's got 21 HP. Julio over the wall. Blink. Double fearless. He's got it. Paul double stun though underneath the tier 1 tower, but the Leviathan's able to retreat.
Man, Julio with that rotation, so good for his team. Doesn't quite find the kill with the ultimate, but does force out the beads from Paul. Now, Paul, no ultimate available means damage mitigation is low, as is his defensive capacity. Yarkor dropping the ultimate, trying to find the solo kill on a Cyclone Spin, who rides the Bifrost out safely. This has been an action-packed game, and it's been largely rooted in aggression from the Leviathans. This is a very different pace than I would have associated with them. Usually they like to wait for that 25-30 minute mark and then group up as this 5-man roaming deathball, but the Leviathans seem like they're willing to bring the fight in right now.
And it's paid off. Couple of kills, assists spread across the board. Only Julio the one without an assist, but he's got the one kill, so he's feeling just fine about that. Rongyu's been involved in both. Panatom has been involved in both well, so the Leviathan's jungler on this priority pick in the set making it work here 7 minutes into the game. Aurora, Paul, they're going to lock down the Oracles. Over here on the left-hand side by the Greater Scorpion there, Scary D. Now maybe the onus is on him to start to get some momentum rolling for this Tartarus Titan squad. The Anvil of Dawn ready to go here. All about finding that opening, finding that ability, finding the area to make pressure for your team on this semi-global pick.
It is, and Scary D going for a slight deviation in the standard jungle build. Normally we see Shifter Shield get picked up on Chile as well, kind of like what Panatom's going for on the other side, but instead going down that Mace tree, can only imagine it's going to be a Jotun's Wrath to help out with some of that CDR, maybe potentially a Brawler's Beat Stick if he's worried about the sustain coming through from Wrong U, but it is going to sacrifice a lot of that tankiness. If we wanted Scary D to be an initiator for his team, he's got to be picture perfect with it. If he dunks down, doesn't find the CC that he needs with this squishy build, he could fall pretty easily.
Well, it's just tough, you know, for the Titans. What you want to see early and often is these beads being shedded off members of the Leviathans. I've only seen Panatom have to use his so far, at least in recent memory. Maybe a set of beads earlier on in the game that have now come back, but if any ganking, any engaging, what have you, happens in the next few minutes after the next 15 seconds goes by, everyone from the Titans will be able to shrug off at least that initial engage. You could say the same for a few members of the Titans. Paul will have his beads back up here shortly. So that's something to look out for later on. If Scary D can't burn some of these beads off for the big engages from Aurora, it's going to be ever so difficult for the Titans to find these early fights. Wrong you being looked at a little bit here. Root could be down on the other side. Scary D's just going to find the stun, a little poke damage, and the Titans will back away.
So far, the Leviathans have only been willing to fight around Panatom, who immediately dashes forward, takes the ultimate from Aurora, is forced to use the beads. There's the clap from Wrong U, is going to put him in the dirt. Aurora falling for the third time rather, this game.
That was kind of beefy damage from Wrong U there. I did not
Carol.
expect that at all. That's right, Wrong U dropped the ultimate clap down onto Aurora. Now 0-3. Aurora's had a tough start to this season so far. Tough sledding there in the first matchup of the year for the Tartarus Titans, and already 0-3 now. All 3 of the kills for the Leviathans onto the Tartarus Titans support. He's just not been able to get it done. You haven't seen that blink used aggressively. The ultimates feel like they've just been defensive. Aurora just hasn't found that momentum just yet.
But he's not falling too far behind, and neither is the rest of the team. Aurora still maintaining equal level with his opposition. Both supports level 7 at this point. Gold largely equalized as well. Experience largely equalized as well. Despite having 3 kills to 0 deaths, the Leviathans have not been able to transition it into anything meaningful just yet. No objectives have fallen. Neutral objectives have largely been getting split up even 50-50. Leviathans need to turn these into something, and Yarkor seems like he spotted that out as well, clearing out the Greater Scorpion. Next time they find a pick, they should have an advantage towards this Gold Fury.
That's right. So the Leviathans feeling good about the left side of the map here so far. 1 level lead for Cyclone Spin. Ever so important for Heimdall not to get behind in lane, because you need him to get online as soon as possible. Cyclone Spin will take the crystals, get out alive. Yarkor uses the ultimate. So now Desert Fury down for the next couple of minutes. Could be potential for Scary D to maybe make his way over to the left-hand side of the map. Haven't seen the Anvil of Dawn used all that aggressively yet, Mifflin, over the first 10.5 minutes or so of the game.
Yeah, Scary D only using that ultimate once to counter-engage on the left-hand side. Outside of that, largely been relegating himself to just a farming role, but it kind of makes sense. Normally in the 3v3, that's where Thor kind of thrives a little bit, but around this Zhong Kui, even if he does dunk, he's not going to have the largest damage follow-up, maybe de-incentivizing him a little bit from playing around there. Instead, the Titans try to group up inside the enemy jungle. Nothing's up, so they work their way backwards. Seems like both squads pretty contented with the pace of this match, going as slowly as it is. As far as compositions go, I can understand that the Titans do want to wait for that team fight phase to fight around Paul, but waiting in a set up against the Leviathans can't feel great.
No, sure doesn't. It's the team that not only their picks, but just their mentality seems to scale into the late game sometimes. Benji looking for an invade here onto the back side of the map. Panatom 2 levels behind. Julio actually 1 level up over this Coquelin. But this is what the Coquelin wants to do. So it's Benji trying to defend his back camps, rather. I don't know why I'm so mixed up on all this today. And it's Panatom who makes his way on the back side. Scary D now has to use the beads, defending himself against the onslaught from Julio. And Scary D survives with half HP. Panatom loses about half of his health here as well. everyone but the Hunters, all kind of rotating around this backside. Blue buff invade maybe being sold out for by the Leviathans here. Benji's going to do his best to contest. Jean-Qui for Paul, still over in the mid lane, and the blue buff, excuse me, is dropped down by Julio. So they brought the cavalry, the Leviathans did, but didn't need it.
Did not need it, but that poke was phenomenal, and taking away Scary D's beads may have been more important than stripping away that buff in of itself. Again, Scary D, who's been having trouble finding his pace in this match, is going to have to play even safer now on this Thor. Won't be able to dunk down confidently until that defensive relic is available to him again. Now, we're again resetting to this neutral state. The Tartarus Titans are not willing to group up and take a fight up against the Leviathans, but they haven't really been forced into a position in which they have to. Still, 3-0, only about 1,000 gold separating these two teams at 12 minutes. That's next to nothing at this point. The Titans are doing a phenomenal job of just keeping themselves afloat.
Right. It's important for Paul and the Jean-Qui as well, as we watch his build unfold, get a sense of what direction Paul wants to take this pick. It's Rongi now who'll throw up the wall. A little healing for himself here. It's only Shinto in on the assist. I'm a monster there to provide a little extra peel. Wonder if the Titans feel like they could have chased any further, but didn't want to, not knowing where the Leviathans were on the backside of the red buff side of the jungle over here on the left. And as such, the Titans will back away, no pick.
Yeah, it seems interesting that Aurora elects to hold on to his ultimate there. Would not have resulted in a kill, as Rongyu does have beads himself, but stripping away that relic at least would have given them an opening in the next team fight. Maybe they thought, with them taking the gold free, with the chains as long as they are, maybe they should have got the kill otherwise, and the peel from Shinto wasn't quite expected either. But the Leviathans maintain all their defensive relics, they maintain all of their ultimates except for Scylla's, and they get to reset yet again back to neutral. It's kind of the same story we had back in Season 7 of if the Leviathans are able to make it to this 25-30 minute mark, it feels like they are inevitably going to be able to drag you into their pace. That's really where they thrive, and the Titans so far are daring them to do it.
That's right. Let's see what the Titans have brewing for us here on the left side of the map. Nothing, as Yarko and Rongi both back away. It's not for lack of trying. Scary D has been showing face on the left-hand side of the map on a pretty consistent basis here. Is the Gold Fury now being looked at by this Tartarus Titans team? It is being looked at, but that's just about it. Speaking of menacing looks, that's all the Titans have brought over the Fury, but now they're going to act on it. Ward coverage down for both teams. Nobody will be sneaking this one away from either or. And I think Tartarus Titans just poking and prodding. Let's see how the Leviathans respond to this objective. If we can sneak it away, that brings us right back into a comfortable spot in this game. If not, nothing wagered, nothing gained, I suppose.
No, both teams a little bit too hesitant to move in towards that Gold Fury, and it makes sense with the game state as it is. I think the first time we see this Gold Fury go down will likely be off the back of a solo lane rotation. Both squads going to want all 5 members for the most important team fight of the match as of yet. Benji's been doing a good job of maintaining his farm over here despite all the pressure the Leviathans have put onto him. It's been 3 or so attempted blue buff invades, 2 successful, and even despite all of that, Benji maintains equal level with his opposition. Yep. Triple goose eggs for Benji to the 1-0 of Julio, but it has not amounted to much.
All right, you're 15 minutes into the game. A lull has fallen over the battlegrounds. Haven't seen much since the first few minutes. Julio level 16, his build going the way it is. Benji level 15, it going the way it is. Who do you want on your team?
I think I want Julio at this point just because of how he fits into the draft, how he's going to be able to burn away those beads for his team, as well as the backline disruption factor that he's able to afford his squad. If Scary D's ever caught out, we've seen what Fearless can do, but maybe I hold that thought. Gold Fury started up and already down to 50%.
And reset and back to where from by the Leviathans. As Aurora shows himself, Scary D, right back in behind. Another team looking at the Fury, looking at the objective, but electing not to really engage on it as the threat just a little bit too high. This better be the most game-breaking, game-changing is the right word, game-changing Gold Fury I've ever seen with how cautious we're playing around this. And maybe it makes some sense. Maybe you're just looking for something like this. A pick over on Rongi, make life easier. Beautiful wall from Scary D. Rongi attempting to disengage, but now Benji is here. Solo laners are here, up into the sky. Goes Scary D. Benji, the first casualty, and Aurora will finally charge up the ultimate, but he's only pulled back in one, and it's Julio. That's not who you want in the backline, but Scary D, he'll get it done himself. A double stun on the backside of Leviathans. They pick out Benji, but they lose Panatom in the meantime.
Paul decides to go for the solo ultimate onto Julio, does drop him down to half health, but drops down to half in exchange himself, losing out on his beads as well. Tartarus Titans now fully on the retreat, but Aurora left high and dry, fearless into the wall.
Oh, and there are the Vines. There are the Vines coming out to play a little bit. Shinto's the one who picks up the kill.
Hold up.
And look at Julio. He doesn't want to finish off the other kill. He wants more on the backside. Oh, he's going to do it to him. Gets Paul. Needs a cooldown. Scary D attempting to chase down the kill, but Shinto is here in assist. Julio nearly got the double on the back end. This man is nuts. 202 on the tier out of the solo.
Bluestone finishes off the kill into Paul, and then from there, it aggroes the back camps to give him the additional healing to survive the double tap from Scary D. Julio's playing 4-dimensional chess, 5-dimensional. It's only been theorized, this level of brain power that I've seen just come through from the tier there. It makes sense why he goes for that play. He stripped away Paul's beads on his own earlier on in the engagement, so he knows if he's able to connect that defense stance fearless, it should set him up for the offense stance as well. Crazy to think that he was still willing to do it, knowing that it was a 2v1 at about 30% HP himself. Julio has zero regard for his own life, and his team is benefiting for it. Now 6-1 are the Leviathans.
Yeah, Julio's playing chess with the people at the end of Interstellar, whatever alternate dimension Matthew McConaughey found himself in. That's where Julio is hanging out right now. Yeah, you were spot on there, Miff. You said, I think I might want this tier on my side. Julio at 202 makes a big play there. Titans able to get a kill. Benji able to grab that assist. Now it's the Titans, after a loss around this Gold Fury, starting up the objective once more, but yet again they'll back away. This is the most stubborn Gold Fury I've maybe ever seen. But now with a bit of an increase in the gold department, it was about 1,000. Now we're looking at 2 and some change thousand gold in the lead. Are the Leviathans 5k XP? That's the differential we got to look at. And that's where the Leviathans are going to hang their hat moving into the next fight.
But it makes sense why the Titans are hesitant to hold on to the objective there. They don't have a standard mage ultimate. They don't have a Kraken. It's not Circle of Protection. Zhongqi ultimate does not touch the Gold Fury, so it's only going to be that second ability to confirm it, maybe the third ability for additional damage if you do toss out the tag. But 500, maybe 600 bursts at this point in the game. Scylla is such a threat at this point that really I don't think the Titans are going to take a neutral objective if Shinto still draws breath. They're going to have to deal with him before they can start looking at the gold or even the pyro.
That's right. The Titans, at this point, just buying time. Look at Cyclone Spin. We talked about this build a lot earlier on in the SEC Mifflin. We're seeing more of it here today. And, I mean, Yarkor, for that matter, following the same build path. You imagine a Deathbringer is going to be the item that rounds out the build here for both of these hunters. And that's when the Heimdall, if left in the back line to just chill and auto-attack, can win you these fights. So it seems like the game plan for the Titans now is just to buy some time, let's not roll the dice, and throw it away over a Fury.
It makes sense. Again, they're waiting for that late game team fight. Double-edged sword. I understand that your draft does lean itself towards that 5-on-5, but you gotta imagine that the Leviathans are waiting for that exact same opportunity. Julio already making his rotation over to the center of the map tells me that the Leviathans are again trying to set up a fight around this Gold Fury itself, trying to find an engagement. All relics available to both teams at this point. It's going to be a completely even engagement. The only thing separating them is the XP and gold. Leviathans started up.
Leviathans, everyone over here on the Fury. A little bit early from Shinto on the I'm a Monster, but the Leviathans get the Fury nonetheless. It's a dash away from Rung you here. Fury and nothing is what the Leviathans have their eye on. Up into the sky. Goes Scary D looking for re-engage. I don't know if you want to engage onto Julio, my man, and Julio will leave. Indeed, a little stun, a little poke damage on the back end. But it's a clean Gold Fury call for the Leviathans.
And did you see the disengage and discipline that the Leviathans put on display there? We got the Gold Fury. All right, I'm out. I don't care anymore. Maybe we get our support out too. It doesn't really matter to me. Rongyu does eventually limp his way out of there, but there was no point that there was any misconceptions on the call. There was no desync in the communications from the Leviathans. They strip away the neutral objective and immediately get out of dodge. Tartarus Titans had no way to re-engage it. Scary D was distracted by Julio, couldn't get himself up into the air until it was too late, and from there, Leviathans, like bandits in the night, dissipate.
We're still waiting to see what this Zhongqi pick has in store for us as well. Divine Ruin, Rod of Tahuti, I believe it was Charon's coin just purchased there by Paul. Charon's coin seen an increase in purchase over the last couple of games. So you talk about late game scaling. Maybe that's where this Zhang Kui is on his way. You get a few stacks on that Charon's coin, you're going to be feeling good, but you've only gotten 1 kill in the entire game so far, so it's going to take a little while for that to fully hit its stride, but you get some flat pen, and now you get big percentage pen, 20% on that Charon's coin, so maybe synergize as well with the way Paul wants his build to go.
And that movement speed should help him out chasing out with the ultimate itself. But again, he is sacrificing a lot of survivability. Zhang Kui has to be alive to get all that damage off, has to channel that ultimate, and once he does go into that ultimate, sure, it gets a little bit defense boost from the ability itself, but the second it's done, he's going to have nothing to lean back on. It feels like, to me, Paul's willing to die for his team from the positioning that he's been taking recently.
Right.
But it hasn't quite panned out for them just yet. So far, the Leviathans just feel like they're a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more concise on their calls, and they are benefiting from it greatly. Scary D as well has not had an impactful dunk yet this game.
Nope, not wrong on that one, Mifflin. Still waiting to see if that can change. 1 level over, Panatom, 2-1-2 for the set. 1-0-0 for Scary D. So, been able to keep himself in the farm department, while the kills in the assist department have been over for Scary D counterpart in Panatom on the Leviathans. Paul and Shinto, if given the space to operate, will absolutely melt through their targets here, and that's what it's really all about now, is buying time for the mid laners, backliners to find that damage, and that's why we talk about Scary D's kind of non-existent dunks here just yet. One a minute ago over, just to kind of poke down onto Julio just a little bit more. Both the Fury halfway back towards respawning, Pyromancer is there as well, with how cautious these teams have been around the Fury. You know, Pyromancer, Fire Giant Myth, you got to imagine that'll follow a similar trend.
You could imagine, but again, we are starting to reach that 25-minute mark where it almost feels like a Jekyll and Hyde situation for the Leviathans. They hit the gas pedal the second they all tick over to level 20, and they are rapidly approaching that state. All the carries on the side of the Leviathans reaching that final stage of evolution, except for Panatom, who still has 1 left to go. Pyromancer started up,
Never mind.
and it seems like low opposition from him. Scary D attempting a steal.
Scary D will not get the steal. Instead of Roar gets the best pull of the game so far, but it's Julio and Rongi that get pulled in. Healthy targets. Now Scary D. Anvil of Dawn will connect over onto Rongi, but Rongi walks away from this one and keeps himself alive. Good beads from him. I'm a monster up and over. Sends Scary D headed the other direction. Leviathans again grab the objective. Disengage. Tartarus Titans attempting to fight in, but unable to do so.
They do, at least, Tartarus Titans, that is, strip away the beads from Rongyu and Panatom as well. In exchange, the relics go the way the Tartarus Titans. Scary D loses out on both of his, and the blink engagement from Aurora no longer on the table. I could imagine Leviathans reset, spend the gold from the Pyromancer, regroup. I think they are in the advantage state here. They could go ahead and look to pull the Fire Giant. Tartarus Titans seem to be worried about it. Scary D and Aurora starting to work their way down the right-hand side, but Yarkor has not started his rotation just yet. Might be a little bit until we see the Dance of the Fire Giant begin in earnest.
That's right. Still weird to me saying Yarkor hasn't rotated over to Fire Giant, because I'm so used to seeing him over on the solo
He used
side
to live
of the map.
there.
Instead, it's been Julio, 202 in the solo lane for the Leviathans, has definitely made his mark so far this year and in this game as well. 4 out of the 6 kills affected by the tier there out of solo lane. Usually around this time is when XP is a big differential. Half HP from Cyclone Spin is now missing. We'll see if Cyclone wants to fight back in, and if he does, he's got Shinto, Rongyu, and Panatom waiting for him around the corner. Could we see a skirmish around this tier 1 tower? We will not, just the reinforcements arriving. Instead, it's the teams starting to eye the Fury, Primal Fury this time around. That'll make the Fire Giant a little bit easier for the Leviathan should they grab it, of course, for the Titans as well, if it ends up being stolen away. But it looks like Myth, no contest, and I think that's one that Aurora knew was happening, just weren't in position to get anything done.
Yarkor has zero respect for Cyclone Spin. We just saw it there. Jumps in, knowing that the Tartarus Titans have a global ultimate inside of Scary D. Says, I don't care. My team will be here eventually. Drops the ultimate just raw. Doesn't need any CC. And forces out Cyclone, rather, to set up for the gold tree itself. In exchange, the Titans try to get over to this Fire Giant in time, but immediately spotted out. Now the Leviathans stagger their way in.
Scary D, Anvil of Dawn looking for the engage. A little bit of a grouping there. Instead, those mid lane Harpies get absolutely dunked on, and Scary D now does not have that ultimate for the remainder of what could be a Fire Giant fight. As a matter of fact, look at the diamonds on the left-hand side of your screen. Benji, Scary D, Aurora, no ults Leviathans feeling like they're in a good spot to take this fight. All 10 relics ready to go for the Leviathans. Scary D waiting for the beads. Aegis blinked out from Benji. Leviathans get the FG. Will there be a fight on the back end of it? The Leviathans feel like they've got the advantage. Paul has to leave the fray. So does Scary D. But up and over. Who else but Julio joins the fight. But out he goes. Leviathans looking for the opening pick. Paul survives, but a spear from Yarkor gets it done. Cyclone's he's been free casting mid.
Yarkor?
Pull back one.
Jumps in on his own, does not care. Double kill for the new ADC. Now Cyclone Spin isolated, falls down to Shinto. Leviathans are running away with the pace of this game. Only trading out Panatom. They gotta feel good about it. Fire Giant on 4, Tier 2 tower falling, and 40 seconds left on Paul. They could look at a Phoenix here.
That's right, they are looking exactly at that. Yarkor's still there. Cyclone Spin not in on the defense. You have to be careful here. Look, if you're Benji or you're Aurora, specifically if you're Benji, and these waves are big enough here in the middle lane of the map, this game could end if you give away your life too quickly. Yarkor doing so much damage in onto this Phoenix. There's a wave on the right-hand side. Minions pushing down the mid lane, and we'll see immediately that the response by the Leviathans is to back away. Looking towards the left side of the map now. Tier 2 tower there. Tier 2 tower and right as well. Plenty of time left on this FG. 2 minutes, 45 seconds ready to go for the Leviathans. Don't need to force anything just yet.
They don't. Benji trying to chase out Julio here shouldn't amount to much. If Julio doesn't turn around, there's no world where he dies. And I want to talk about Julio, Dave. Inside of that last team fight, my man zoned off 3 people from Fire Giant, and then the second he gets it around his belt, says, all right, time to go, and moves his way forward, forces the ultimate out of Paul, forces the relics out of Scary D. This guy is doing so much for his team as one of the rookies new to this roster. And he has proven his worth, absolutely.
This Tier skin always cracks me up, the puppeteer. Because he's such like a hardened looking dude, and then he's just got the sock puppet on the other arm. There's something comical about it. And then he walks in and just beats you to death with the full rotation of his abilities. Julio playing this pick near the top of its potential, if not at the top of its potential. Fire minions moving down the mid lane. No Fury here on the left side of the map. Seems like the Titans have just been on the back foot. They've looked for engages. Scary D particularly early, but that's kind of faded away. At least as a team, they've rotated and tried to go poking and prodding, but Leviathan's so good taking objectives and backing away. And then every once in a while, Miff, they won't back away, and they'll punch you in the face, and that's exactly what happened around this FG. Now you got to wonder if the Titans are feeling confident at all about this Phoenix defense.
The game does simplify on defense, and Zhongqi being that walking no-play zone should be good once the fight starts off in earnest. All the Leviathans have to do if they want to take the safest approach is engage softly, wait for the ultimate to come out from Zhongqi, disengage, resustain, be it through healing inside of their items or just from Fire Giant itself, and then re-engage yet again. Once that Zhongqi ultimate is down, that's really where the Titan's going to struggle to maintain the base. They have to win the initial engagement if they want to win the engagement at all.
It's a split here. It's Julio in the mid. That'll bring Benji over to the mid as well. The other 8 players in this game are under what was
just down
the left side Phoenix. Oh my god, that was grossly fast. There was no attempt at a fight back there from the Titans. I'm not sure there was a chance for the Titans to fight back with how fast that died. Yarkor decimated the health bar on the left side Phoenix, and that's great, Mifflin. Look at this. Minute 20 seconds left on the respawn for the FG. 20 seconds remaining on the buff itself. You get the left side Phoenix down. That's the big prize now for the Leviathan. Somebody from the Titans is going to have to stay left, clear out that wave. Should make the next Fire Giant, a little bit easier.
Should be, and already the Leviathans 30 minutes in again have the best confirmation. They're willing to toss it up to a coin. It's not a coin toss, really. If the Leviathans have I'm a Monster available to them, they should almost never lose out on one of these neutral objectives. Interesting that the Titans decide not to put up any form of defense on the left side, Phoenix. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but no ultimates were used, no relics were used either, no engagement attempt from the Order side team to maintain their base. Instead, maybe they're just putting all their chips inside of the you can't kill my Titan basket. Walk in here, maybe I'll kill you here, but I'm not stepping out any further than my Titan's range.
I mean, there's 1 tower left standing. The mid lane Phoenix will respawn soon. Oni fire minions in 2 out of the 3 waves. Regular old Oni minions on the right-hand side of the map. This is what should be about as free as it gets of a Fire Giant for the Leviathans here. They'll make sure to cross their T's, dot their I's, ward up deep in the jungle. Let's see if anyone from the Titans is going to show any face. Fire Giant about to respawn. It's going to be enhanced this time as well. See, I mean, you're really rolling the dice here, Miff, on a Phoenix line, or a Titan line defense. If you're the Titans, let's see if this gap gets closed. Fire Giant started up the moment it spawns by the Leviathans. Benji's going to be sent around the right here. Aurora poking forward, but look how fast this objective is dying. If the Titans want to go, they need to go now, and they have not gone in time. Instead, Shinto confirms the objective. Aurora down to 10% HP, eats the Desert Fury, but Scary D, he's found the backline.
Nice.
He's found Shinto, he's found the opening kill. But is it enough? Aurora low as well, and Yarkor has cleaned up the Thor on the backline. And look at the backliners, though, for the Leviathan. Still alive, still full HP. Yarkor positioning himself properly to stay in it, but Paul, he stormed the gates. He's gotten the kill. It's wrong, you trading back one onto Aurora. Julio's health bar is melting down as well, and it's Cyclone Spin with the HP.
And Cyclone Spin keeps moving forward. Root from Benji is good, but Julio still had the ultimate available to him. Should be able to disengage out of that one. A staggered engage from the Titans might pan out, but Cyclone Spin doesn't catch the memo. The rest of his team disengages.
Whoa,
Cyclone Spin wants the kill. That's 60 seconds without your ADC, Dave. 30 seconds of support and 20 on your jungler. The Leviathans are now moving forward. If Cyclone Spin doesn't lose his life there and instead just goes back to base, I think that's it for the Leviathans push, but now they're feeling empowered. They can start moving forward again and keeping their eyes on this right side Phoenix.
That's right, Fire Minions pushing down the left side. That Phoenix will respawn here shortly. You still have plenty of physical damage from Julio, plenty of physical damage from Panatom as well to get this Phoenix worked down. Benji is here trying to play Separator. Scary D, he's back and respawned as well. Is there enough damage from Panatom? Not just yet.
Tough.
Scary D dunks down, wall goes up, but that just separates. Scary D 8, a little bit more damage than he bargained for on the defense, but now it's the re-engage from Julio. Wrong you. The cavalry is in. Paul decimated by the onslaught from the Leviathans. Benji retreating with half of his health bar, and it is whittling away. Could this be the end of the game? Could the Titans have defended somewhere where they shouldn't have? All three Phoenixes are down. The Titan, thanks to the minions, is already at half HP. The Leviathans, Mifflin, just need to walk in. They just need to auto-attack. It's a big three-man pull from Aurora. Is it enough? The respawns from the Titans are in. Only Paul is left down. He's not alive to defend the base. Shinto takes Cyclone Spin with him. Rongyu and Julio group up. Yarkor and Shinto back at the entrance to the mid lane Phoenix. Aurora still full HP. And Benji continues to surge forward.
Rongyu now low, forced to back up, but Julio has been low this entire time, does not care, finds the Fearless onto Benji, and sets up Yarkor for the big kill. Scary D now in the air.
Why would Julio care? He hasn't yet, and why would he start now? It's the up-down from Scary D. Finds Yarkor, but it's a double from the on-her. This game is certainly coming to a close here. Big stun from Yarkor. Of course, Julio will finish off the deicide. He'll finish off the game. Leviathans take game one.
Man, Paul steps up, maybe to lose his life one more time. Luckily, gets saved by the clock. The Titan couldn't draw breath long enough for Paul to lose his. The Leviathans, that was impressive play. Such a treat to watch these guys tackle any other team. Every single time it felt like the Titans were starting to surge forward, you realized just moments later, oh, the Leviathans were just waiting to turn around. You used your slow, now it's time for me to turn on a dime 180 and change the face of this match. Don't wait till the late game to play against the Leviathans. They're so comfortable there.
Apparently, Julio, he's good at tier. That's my takeaway here from game number one. Leviathans up 1-0 here in this best of three. We'll be back after this break.
Welcome back to the SPL. A big win there for the Leviathans, and a big win for us and you if you want to be a part of it. Thanks to Alienware for partnering with us, which means that now there's all kind of cool stuff that you all can be a part of. Go check out their products, give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware, and join their global community at alienwarearena.com for giveaways and all kind of cool stuff. So go check that out. It'll become a real cool win-win. Super cool. They were able to partner here with us. Now, Gore, we gotta address this game that we just got through seeing here, man, where the Leviathans did exactly what Sanguine did for all of last year, and what I think that the Leviathans are gonna do for a whole lot of time going forward, which is, things were kind of slow through that 20-minute mark. Some good early pressure for them, but for the most part, once things got to that late game, they started popping off as usual.
Yeah, and this one, again, was a little more of a kickoff than I think we expected. I think I heard Dave at one point say they were being a lot more proactive. Same thing for Mifflin. A little more proactive than we're really used to seeing. But realistically, it was as time went on, specifically when Julio started making rotations over. That is when things really transition. I mean, this is 5 minutes in. Julio's rotating out of the solo lane. It's not something we got to see a lot out of other solo laners as of right now, just yet, as we've gotten to see. And look, like, Julio is just absolutely a menace. I think I just heard, at the very end there, that death, that final tick of damage was the Harpies, not necessarily Julio coming through, even though he set it up all right. Who helped set that one up. Yeah, and look, if Julio and Yarkor are going to look like this, like, Julio has been a solid player, again, on the Poppies in the SCC for years, then played for Belt Slap last year. Like, he has been around the scene for a long time, and if he's going to continue looking like this, he fits right into the SPL, fits right into this Leviathans roster. I remember talking to them and them saying that Julio was a good pick for them just because it allowed them to continue speaking their native language. They didn't have to necessarily translate or change over to English, which is something they're willing to do, but they didn't want to as much as they could. When your tier's going 4-0-9, wrong you at 2-0-12, you know you're having a good game. Yarkor, a seamless transition there, 5-1-5. I think at one point, one of the bravest jump-ins that I've gotten to see, but he manages to get top damage in the game. I think Yarkor, along with Julio, the swaps they made, the way they're playing, the Leviathans, they're a team to be worried about here in Phase 1.
Yeah, and honestly, it should be surprising no one, really. An impressive performance from the Leviathans that just kept in step with what they did in Season 7. I know it's a team that a lot of people are down on because they had some struggles when those lands or big playoff events came around, but for the most part, this team was dominant, Gore, and always winning in these in these regular season games, and was a top 3, top 2 team throughout most of it. And I don't think I really expect that to have changed too much coming in here. And then on the other side, if you're the Titans, it looks like nothing is working right now. Aurora's 0-6 was really bullied in the early game. Scary D at times looked a little bit lost on the Thor to me. That's something that we know he can play. It's just it wasn't quite there for him. I think this team is still struggling to get their feet underneath them. And the Zhong Kui, I mean, I think Paul made it look good, but I'm just not completely sold on what we saw from there in Game 1.
I mean, you can only look so good when that kind of game happens, right? So I think a lot of wiggle room, like a lot of wiggle room for the Titans here to increase what they're going to be capable of here in game number 2. I think that one falls apart pretty quickly, pretty early on, and I want to see a little bit more out of them in this next game, whether it's a draft change, and I definitely think maybe a sprinkling of draft change is going to be due. I think it's going to have to come down to how they approach this early game, because the Leviathans were out for blood from minute 1. They started being able to cultivate their lead. So I really want to see if the Titans can at least slow them down, if not really impede their progress, find more than just a couple of wins throughout the game.
Well, let's go ahead and hop into the picks and bans then for game number 2. Those are just about ready. I don't know if the Titans had to make a ton of adjustments in terms of their bans. Maybe you take the tier away from Julio, but in that case, do you want to pick it? Maybe like as that 4th ban, so to speak, which you use as your very first pick? Or do you slide up there in those top 3 bans? Remember, it was 5 Guardian bans, and then the Guan Yu as a Warrior ban that we saw happen in Game 1. I don't know if a whole lot of those are malleable. Amir, Athena, Tiamat. Maybe Tiamat can come down some since he struggled in that last set, but I don't think there's a whole lot of room.
I mean, you want to look at it, Tiamat's 0-3. Maybe Tiamat's the only one that can come down, but the Leviathans were the ones who banned her last time. She was their second ban in the first phase, so it's not like they're worried about her. In fact, the fact that they had so much open, I think we saw, Raijin was banned, Morrigan got banned, Tiamat was banned. I think those were all the only mages that had been banned away. That still left open things like the Persephone that we know that is really good there for Shinto. So I'm wondering what and where he wants to go in the mid lane. Scylla obviously looked really solid there. I just think they have so much flexibility on the Leviathans. Not a sentence that we got to say a lot. I think there's been a lot of comparisons to Sanguine from last year, but I want to give them a little bit of credit. This team feels way more flexible than Sanguine from last year. We're not seeing a crazy amount of it right now, right? But I do think they have a lot of gods in their pool that maybe they're not just going to be like what we said for Sanguine when they were playing last year, the meta gods and the meta picks. I think this might be a team that can really expand upon their horizons and dominate a little bit more than just what's the best.
Yeah, they've got the flexibility, just as you were saying, to really kind of stretch out and play some different picks. I mean, Tyr is certainly not a bad character, but I don't know if he's at the top of a lot of people's list. It's kind of a Julio special, so I speak to your point.
Oh, yeah.
So, Yamoja, Sobek, Amir, Athena, Tiamat, Guan Yu. This is essentially the same bands that we had back then in game number 1. So what will the Titans go for first overall? I think it's pretty critical. I believe it was the Heimdall for Cyclone Spin, which he did look good on. He even had some late game moments where I thought he was going to be able to stay alive thanks to how much damage he did, but it just wasn't there. And it looks like maybe that's going to be the same case here. Stick with that. And I think it makes sense, Gore. You like maybe giving him back the Heimdall again?
Again, like you said, he looked pretty decent there. They might lose a little bit of the early pressure because of that, especially if you get something like, what was it, on her Terra on the other side. Terra maybe not necessarily thought of immediately as early game pressure, but Heimdall was forced into the Bifrost early on, kind of caused some trip-ups for Cyclone in terms of the lane pressure he could bring, and made it a little bit easier overall for the Leviathans duo lane to find control. And I like this response maybe even more than I like the Heimdall pickup for the Titans, just because of the fact that Yarkor stepped to Cyclone Spin like it didn't matter. He didn't care who it was on the other side. He knew he could take control of that fight. And I like them going for this. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they could just run it back. If the Titans continue picking similar things, just pick what you know is going to work against it.
It's looking like so far a run back, isn't it here, Gore? It'd be exciting to see if that is exactly how it ends up playing out, but I doubt things will end up being exactly quite the same here with them running everything back, especially the Zhang Kui and maybe potentially the areas which could all be adjusted. And already we're seeing some changes here. The Osiris being hovered. This has some flex potential. Maybe it's just Sino kind of warping my view of what can work in the jungle, and I'm thinking of Osiris jungle now, but I think there's a chance that with Scaly sort of experience, maybe he could take us into the jungle, or he can go solo.
Yeah, I mean, that's the glory of having a solo laner turn jungler, right? Is that technically he can pull the Sino route and pull these warriors out into the jungle, make them look good. Osiris is one of the few that I think we could give credit to look good in the jungle. But I'll also hearken and shout outs to anybody who tuned in yesterday's SCC. Deathwalker's Osiris over there in solo lane decimated people when he was able to rotate into these fights. I think that's maybe going to be a way to kind of get some grip back onto the control. I mean, the Cucullin wasn't necessarily bad, but it didn't seem to put out the same pressure that you want out of the tier, or that you got out of the tier, I should say. So maybe switching it up to something slightly more mobile and slightly in control to give this Osiris a better victory, especially to maybe ward off something like the tier on top of it.
Yeah, or potentially even the set if it does end up in the jungle. I feel as though we might still be a little off here. This Hercules could very easily end up just in Aurora's hands. He was perhaps the most dominant during that big Hercules support stretch where he, Neil, and Mike were all very, very good with it, all elite with it. I think Aurora might still have edged everyone out. This could be a good sort of renaissance for him since they have to shake off these early troubles to go back to a pick we know he's been dominant on in the past. But because of its aggressive nature and somewhat volatile nature, if they do send a support and it struggles in the early, it might do way more damage than it could have done good.
That's a huge concern to have, right? I mean, Heimdall Hercules, theoretically early on, that could hit really hard, but whatever gets paired with this on her is probably going to be able to find some pressure. There's 4 Guardians, off of the board. Now make it 5 with that Terra.
Wow.
You could maybe throw Jake over there, considering what we saw last year, or throw Tyr under the bus as well, even though we know that'd be the Julio special. Wrong you, though, I mean, he's known to play things like the Horus, so I wouldn't be upset to see him flex into something like that. It depends on what they want to do for their solo lane. If they grab this, they can really get the full flesh of it. I like saving their support for the end, because Cerberus is still available. Like, a lot of the picks we've seen banned away or kind of controlled here in Season 8 are open for Wrong You to pick up.
my question now is I wonder where Paul's going to go in this middle lane. Is Scylla Morgan banned away? The Raijin selected for the Leviathans, so it's limited a bit, but there's still a lot of good picks available to him that Paul likes to play. Remember, his sort of signature pick when he first came up was that Havois, but doubt we'll be seeing him coming through, as it's now the third warrior selected for the Titans. Osiris, Hercules, and Achilles. I think all functionally interchangeable core at this point, so kind of hard to read where these are going to go. But I think now seeing it, there's a pretty good chance it is going to be Herc support, Achilles jungle, Osiris solo, but hard to say for sure.
Man, he goes back to Jonathan Quay. I don't know, man. It's just Jean Quay is... Man, I don't know what to think. That was not a good game for him, and that on its own is usually enough merit for me to say maybe, I don't know why, but I think he is a good, a decent enough god. But again, it changes. Everything changes at the pro level. Where does Zhang Kui fit in? You had kind of highlighted, we were talking about it while we were watching it, but like when you have your Zhang Kui ult, you feel pretty confident. This to me screams that they don't think, at least on the side of the Titans, that Heimdall and Zhang Kui were the problem. Those two are consistent, and that they just needed something else around them. You get a execute there now online with Achilles, a lot of slows to help confirm that damage there from the Osiris, and a pluck back, a lot of easy setup from the Hercules. I think the team fight around these warriors, especially with their survivability, is going to be crucial, but the damage from Heimdall and Zhang Kui not only has to be on point, it has to be ever present. You can't see, at least I don't see as much getting done with just the warriors. Still may be able to get a kill or two, but when you add Heimdall and Zhang Kui, that's when you can start adding in like deicides to the equation. But I look over on the other side, the Anher, the Set, the Raijin. At least for Anher and Raijin, like, they don't need to be in your face. Yarkor played Anher in your face anyway, but they don't have to be able to find success. Set does a lot of damage. King Arthur and Cerberus are going to have a pretty decent amount of peel. Cerberus maybe not as much as things like Sobek and Ymir as we've seen in the past, but I feel like this is a good draft for the Leviathans. On just a blanket statement, the way they play the game, this draft is going to function well for them. Whereas the Titans, once again, are giving me a little bit of flavor from the Zhang Kui, some flavor from the Osiris to see what it can bring out. It's definitely it's a delicious dish. It's just whether or not they can serve it with the right portions, I guess, so the right presentation to make it look good as it could be on paper. There's a lot of theory behind the Titans that would look and play well, but can they actually execute it at that level?
Right, and it's a question of how heavily would this team drop off if they don't dominate the early game. I mean, if it's something like an attack speed Osiris, it can still function. Execution Achilles are always good, but they are putting immense pressure on Aurora, not just to be strong at the early game, but he's basically their only displacement setup guy unless they are full-on diving, and I think that is going to be the call for this team, to just run at the Leviathans. It's kind of up to Aurora to provide that setup for the team to get things started.
And running straight into the Leviathans, I don't know how heftily that's going to work, because not only is it the Hercules lockdown that's going to set you up, but Set pretty slippy and able to get away. Anher has a leap to get away. Raijin has a leap to get away. King Arthur has a dash to get away. And Cerberus, well, guess what? He has a leap to get away. Running at them might create some space, but can you actually get the kills? That's what the Titans have to answer.
Well, let's go into game number 2 then. Dolson and Mifflin, take it away.
Yeah, one more time, at least one more time, Leviathans and Titans will go toe-to-toe. Interesting start before I introduce my mystery co-caster here. The Titans all grouping up as all right, well, our graphics. Our graphics bailed you out there, Mifflin. It is Mifflin who's back with me. I guess Finch already said it. Doug's still with us for game number 2. Just poking their heads around the corner are the Titans, but nobody from the Leviathans will be that far forward. So, no first blood to be had just yet. Miff, let's look at these drafts, though. Sticking with a lot of the core, the idea of what worked there for the Leviathans is going to be King Arthur instead of Tyr for Julio, but you can kind of consider it the same mindset. Shinto on a bit of a different pick here in the Raijin, so you imagine the Leviathans have a pretty similar game plan going into game 2.
Yeah, they're going to be waiting for that 25, 30 minute. Maybe we just stop talking about the Leviathans game plan in general. It's frustrating because it's a good plan that doesn't necessarily have a direct counter to it. Are you just going to be able to blow them out of the water in the early to prevent the Leviathans from making it to that 25, 30 minute mark? Well, it seems like that's what the Titans are going to be trying to do in this one. They've taken out that triple warrior composition. I might as well call it quadruple warrior, with Zhongqi acting as a magical one come team fight phase. And it seems like they're trying to set a very early pace. We need to see Scary D get involved much earlier this time around if this draft can work.
The question is the pick to do that on an Osiris? It's an early bit of pressure there from Aurora into the mid lane, but that's left Cyclone Spin alone. Early beats from Cyclone Spin buys himself some time. Well played by the Titans Hunter, but sucks you have to burn your beads a minute and 15 seconds into the game. It was an attempted bit of early pressure by Aurora, and a bit of a consolation prize is that Rongyu and Panatom both have, or Rongyu used his engage, on Cyclone Spin just a minute ago, but Panatom had to burn his beads as well. So, set of beads down on either side of the map.
That is good for them, but they're going to need to do even more than that. Aurora does dedicate his blink himself, so it's going to be a little bit harder for him to find those opportunities yet again. And even there, that beads from Panatom was reaction to the sound of blink. I'm not even sure that driving strike actually makes contact, but better safe than sorry if you're the Leviathans. Don't want to take a tumble in the early game, especially considering what their strategy is, which, as it always is, wait for that 25-ish minute mark so they can group up as 5 and act as a concentrated unit. Now Aurora forced to rotate back over to the duo lane so he doesn't put Paul too far behind, is going to be benefiting from the benevolence, giving all of his lane partners a little bit of additional farm.
Panatom, here's you, Myth, and he wants to get things going right away, and he will get things going. First blood over to the Leviathans. It's a sidestep from Julio, but it's not enough. Scary D in onto the counter gank. Both solo laners down, but Julio's the one who gets the kill on one side, and it's the jungler, Scary D, who picks up the return kill on the other.
That could be huge for Scary D. That confidence boost of having that kill bounty on him should feel pretty good. Goes for the blue buff invade on the right-hand side, and I believe is successful in able to take it away. That is going to be a huge start for the jungler on the Order side, but even then, he has to maintain this pace. You can't just get one kill and then rest on your laurels. That's what he did in Game 1. He needs to maintain it and use this lead and bring it to the rest of his team.
So Scary D now on this Osiris pick. It's going to be less immediate, right? If you're talking about needing to apply constant pressure with Thor, obviously it's not just this easy, but it feels like you just need to press 5 and then, or 4, excuse me, gank a lane, and you'll be setting up fights for your squad. Osiris, sure you can leap in, but it's a little less automatic than maybe just that of Thor. So Scary D's positioning, his pathing, all of that's going to be ever so important here. Already pairing up with Aurora. As the supports make their way out of the duo lane, start to impact this game in the 3v3 sense. It's Panatom on this set, who, remember, did so much of that in the early game before we hit a lull, dancing around the Gold Fury there for a little while. The set pick makes its way through again, Mifflin, I think an unsung hero of Game 1. I mean, obviously, Julio got a lot of talk, Shinto, Yarkor, the whole squad of the Leviathans got shouted out. I think Panatom looked fantastic. Getting this pick back is certainly good for the Leviathans.
When Panatom plays set, he doesn't play it for that late-game burst potential prowess. Instead, he almost uses it as a bridge pick throughout the early, saying, I'm going to put pressure wherever I can. I'll sacrifice some farm like this to put my lane partners ahead. Now, Benji forced back into his tower at 10% HP. That's exactly what you want to see from Panatom. No sustain really on the side of the Achilles. Means that he's going to have to play incredibly safe or just go back to base and lose out on some farm. Panatom doing a good job of establishing pressure on the map, but does sacrifice time in the jungle spent not farming, so Scary D should benefit from about a 1-level lead or so lead.
It's a beautiful double stun there from Benji to stay alive. We'll heal just a little bit. Yeah, when he toggles his ability there on getting some damage later on. Blue buff looked at, dropped down, but picked up by Julio there, so nearly stolen away by Scary D, trying to put pressure onto Julio the best that you can. Seems like that's what you kind of got to do against Julio after game number 1. You got to try to put pressure there, cross your fingers, hope it works out. But look at the pressure that's on to Scary D now. Stun connects, Julio rotates on over from Solo, and everyone's here as well. The Leviathans send 4.
Nice
and
ult.
Scary D goes down. Beautiful ultimate from Rongyu as well. Aurora deciding where he can position himself to be of the most use, but away is about the best that he can do. And it's another kill over the Leviathans.
Overextension from Scary D attempting to steal out those back camps. Once he's spotted out by Panatom, it's pretty easy to get the rest of the Leviathans to rotate on over. Didn't expect it to be Wrong You. Maybe Shinto would have been the one, but the blink forward from Cerberus does put him in range to follow up. Unfortunate circumstance for Scary D, who was benefiting from a pretty nice lead up until that point.
How many times have we seen this? Yarkor getting aggressive onto Cyclone Spin, offensive use of the ultimate from Yarkor, and Cyclone Spin has to use his ultimate defensively. It seemed to work out, though, Mifflin. If the game plan, right, we've talked about the Leviathans, let's bide our time, let's get the objective, back away, bait in the enemy team. Cyclone Spin trying to stay alive here was his game plan, the re-engage from the Leviathans. They don't want to wait. They want to engage, and they want to do it now. Scary D will get the stun onto Yarkor, but Yarkor has the beats. It's a stun return from Wrong You onto Aurora, but Aurora shakes it off, driving strikes right on through Yarkor. Both hunters down.
Panatom and Wrong You just decide not to help out their homie there, Yarkor. Gets his kill and gets to go back to base in a body bag in exchange. It felt like Panatom could have gotten involved a little bit earlier there, or at least tried to peel out with auto attacks, especially considering how stacked their wave was, but being completely felt more confident just going back to base. It still is going to be a good trade for Yarkor in that exchange, just sending Cyclone Spin back and having Cyclone Spin not get any of that incredibly stacked up wave should amount to about a half level lead or so, maybe an entire level in favor of Yarkor.
Been quiet around the mid lane. Could not say the same in game number 1. Give Shinto some time to scale, save for Paul. Both mid laners probably happy with that. This game about as dead even as it gets. Gold, double digits on either side. XP, same there. So now it's really for the junglers in that pressure to kind of decide which direction this game goes. Scary D has to leap out and away from Wrong Yu's ultimate. Wrong You been very active here early. Aurora has the kill, but feels like the Hercules has had to play reactionary to a lot of the early pressure here. Tartarus Titans might realize that Wrong You is a bit caught out here. Scary D will whittle down that health bar. Wrong You slowed. Aurora continuing to chase. There's an excavate on the other side. Should this chase continue? And the excavate is there, but a stun back from Yarkor will keep Scary D out of the fray. Cyclone Spin maybe looking for a big play here. Will Aurora get the kill? Do you want a tower dive here? I'm not so sure.
No, they're backing up for sure. I think they spot out the Shinto rotation called out by Paul. Once they don't have eyes on him anymore, if they go into that tower, they run the risk of Raijin showing up, and he would have absolutely changed the face of that dive. Maybe they would be able to pick up Wrong You, but likely at the cost of 2 of them. So I like this call from the Tartarus Titans. Instead, going to go ahead and get this Greater Scorpion down, Gold Fury spawning, and with this early game draft that the Titans have, they should be able to force the fight there. Triple Warrior, incredibly strong at the 8-minute mark. Paul, with this dive potential in the Zonqui, should be able to help out as well. They are essentially on a timer, if you ask me, the Titans that is. If this game does make it to the 30-minute mark, I have to just favor the draft from the Leviathan. So this pace that the Titans are setting now should be pretty good for them. This Gold Fury is going to be very indicative of how this match goes.
And if you're a betting man, Miff, I think you are betting on this game going at least 30 minutes with the way that the teams can delay things out here if the game is not swinging in their way one way or the other. A bit of a pivot for Paul. Goes Spear of Desolation first overall on the Zonqui this time. Divine Ruin was first overall in game number 1, so maybe not needing it as much. Wrong You, Stygian Torment, no good. Scary D picks up the early pick. Gold Fury spawn is a big fight for the Tartarus Titans. If you can get one more, you feel confident around this objective. Shinto with the Taiko drums, fearing and taunting in a couple members of the Tartarus Titans. Yarkor all alone on the back line, uses his beats, he'll stay alive, but Scary D leaping on in. Panatom has found the kill though onto Paul on the backside. Will the set escape? For the time being, yes. Scary D chases down onto one and Shinto will end up going down. Big trades back and forth on either side. Believe it was a 2-for-1 for the Titans.
Yeah, Titans come out ahead in that exchange and tie up the slash lines, even putting themselves ahead insofar as gold, but this is going to be huge. Risky play. If Wrong Yu's got his head on a swivel, should be able to spot this one out, potentially get there in time.
Low.
They're falling low.
Wrong You, does he want to chase here? Scary D is just a stun and some fiery breath away from dying. And Wrong You will happily trade his blink in exchange for stopping that Gold Fury and maybe getting a kill on the back end. Benji under some pressure now by Julio. Panatom over in the soul lane once more. Stun is there, but tanky enough to survive. the tier 1 tower dive are Panatom and Julio, but they will not. Instead, it's the blue buff timed invade by Panatom and Julio. Drop that down, strip some XP away. Benji, unfortunately, has been under the pressure of Panatom consistently, but he's only died once.
Yeah, Benji has not been allowed to operate on this side of the map. I'd say Julio's been getting the better end of this engagement, but he's just been outnumbered. Benji, that is, every single time. Leviathans only jump inside of that solo lane now. On the right-hand side, a small skirmish over the neutral camps. Jump in from Rongyu. Doesn't amount to much. Instead, just be able to take those for himself absolutely for free. But the Titans get something much more important, that Oracle Vision, especially considering the fact that they've been the ones aggressing on this neutral objective the entire match, should help them out slightly. Last time around, first Gold Fury goes the way of the Leviathans due to some early aggression from Yarkor. We could see a repeat of the same.
That's right, Cyclone Spin has withstanded a lot of the early aggression there as well. 0-1-0 on this Heimdall, starting to get towards that scaling point in the game. Still Executioner, Wind Demon, Deathbringer waiting. 3-1-1 for Scary D as well. We asked for a little bit more pressure out of the jungle, and we've certainly gotten it here.
Rongyu.
From the Tartarus Titans jungler. Oh my god, Rongyu. No, you can't participate on your red buff, I suppose, but now Panatom is in, and look at the damage that's weaving through from the Leviathans here. Panatom and Shinto can cleave so much of that damage around clumped up targets. Yarkor does not have his ultimate here. He'll have to go beneath his own tier 1 tower. Scary D has been left for dead. Aurora with a knockback, but Scary D dies nonetheless. Panatom has to leave. Do Yarkor, Shinto, and Panatom re-engage? They sure do. There's the slow we've been talking about, and there's the Raiju as well. A double kill for Shinto, and the Raijin is on the board.
Man, the Leviathans, it's crazy how much trust they put in each other as a team. Even when they fall low, they know, as long as I'm able to make something proactive happen here, my team can move around behind me. Panatom, at 1/10 HP, still moves forward. Yarkor, at 1/4 HP, jumps into the opposition, knowing that if at any point the Titans turn around, even if it does cost him his life, he should be able to get something for the rest of his squad. It's crazy the amount of teamwork that they're putting into every single one of these engagements, and it gets them another small win. Able to strip away that red buff, picked up by Rongyu, I believe there, should help him out a little bit as well. He's going to need some of that as well. He needs that farm. Rongyu's been really struggling to find these engagements.
But when he does, he hurts. Stone of Binding for Rongyu, stripping away some of those protections. Kind of feels like a call an ambulance, but not for me sort of game plan from Rongyu here, where it looks like Rongyu is just dead to rights, and then the Titans are able to leave, but then there's such a quick response from Panatom and Shinto time and time again that end up making it like a 2-for-1 trade. We'll see how that plays out here around the Gold Fury. Started out by the Titans. Leviathan's a bit slow on the response. Shinto still back in base. Stygian Torment onto 3, but Aurora gets out of it. It's an immediate ultimate on to Rongyu, so he'll crash down here shortly, and Rongyu will leap away. Call an ambulance this time for Rongyu, and the Tartarus Titans happy to take that pick. The rest of the Leviathans have to back off.
But what a distinct call. Do they need to back off? They used 4 ultimates and only 2 of them actually hit Rongyu. Sure, you pick up the kill, but Paul drops his ultimate, hits nobody. Aurora mistimes his own, and now the turnaround starts. Panatom's in.
Lot spent on getting this kill into Rongyu. Will it make Paul pay? It sure will. Panatom just shy of being stunned away. Another engage. Another double kill for Shinto on the Rongyu. Could be looking at 3. Raiju just a bit wide. Thunder Crash up, down. Yarkor, Desert Fury, take the kill, my man. Oh, the stun is beautiful. Double for Yarkor. You gotta be kidding me. Leviathans firing on all cylinders.
They really are, man. Phenomenal rotation from Yarkor. The ultimate, maybe 6 out of 9 spears find their way home. Knocks him out of the Bifrost, making sure that the kill goes his way as well. It's just a good recognition from the Leviathans. They saw exactly what we did. 4 ultimates down. There's really not a lot of threat to us. It's Triple Warriors don't have the damage output. Zhang Kui, without his ultimate, doesn't have the damage output. Might as well take the fight, and they absolutely do. Trading out Rongyu for 4 targets and a Gold Fury. I'm sure the Leviathans are pretty happy with how that one pans out.
Man, gold and XP skyrocketing towards the Leviathans, but plummeting on the graphs away from the Tartarus Titan side of things here. Now you start to worry about the XP differential in the mid lane. Shinto has suddenly showed up in this game. 4-1-3 on the Raijin, 7 out of 10 affected kills, but Panatom Myth needs to continue to be the topic of conversation here. 1-0-9. Panatom on the set has affected every single kill that has happened in this game. A couple over in solo, a bunch of skirmishes right around the Furies. Phantom has made an absolute difference so far in Game 2.
He really has, and surprisingly, and you don't get to say this often, the set is effectively tankier than Scary D on this Osiris. Elects to go for the stone-cutting sword, so when Scary D does act as that frontliner, as long as he isn't benefiting from his passive, he should be relatively squishy and easy to burn, whereas Panatom has been jumping in time and time again, and then just walks out because of his build. It just feels like this set is getting so much more value at this point. Now, effectively, we get a one-to-one just comparison there. Panatom bullying out Scary D in his own jungle.
Yeah, Panatom's like, wait, you gotta stay in range of me to stun me. Are you sure you want to be here, Scary D? It takes the stun, turns around the damage. Scary D is gonna end up having to leave. Now, it's Benji who hasn't been able to leave his lane just yet. Julio hasn't either, but look at the way the build is going for Julio. This generally is the more popular way that King Arthurs get built. The Reinforced Gravestone of Gaia Glad Shield. So Julio hasn't been able to flex his muscles all that much outside of a couple skirmishes over here on the right. But that's looking like a scary pick come teamfight time.
Yeah, it really, it's not that he hasn't had the chance, it just hasn't come up. Julio hasn't had to take a 1v1. Every single time he decides that it might be an opportunity to fight Benji, Panatom's there, forcing him into the tower with abandon. It's just been a ridiculous showing from Panatom, the jungler of the Leviathans. He's been everywhere his team needs him to be, and then sometimes everywhere the Tartarus Titans don't want him to be. He's literally been the one sole concurrent thread throughout this entirety of the match. He's been the difference maker for his squad, just creating that time and space to approach what is, I'm going to now call, the Leviathans time, 25 minutes in.
The Leviathans time, and we're approaching it quickly here. And the sun could be setting on this set. And on the chances for a Titans win here, it's not completely out of reach. Dead set at 3,000 gold differential. Paul on the Zhang Kui has been there. He's been providing some okay damage in these fights, but at 1, 2, and 2 hasn't quite hit the mark that maybe Titans have been hoping for. To be fair, not much of what the Titans have right now has been working on a very consistent basis, but this was what, like an 8th or a 9th pick Zhang Kui in that draft. And you go right back to it here. So Paul needs to step up big in these late game fights in order to counteract the Leviathans time that we're quickly approaching.
So far, Paul's been struggling to find that damage unless it's on to Rongyu, able to chunk him down to about 70% there, but that's not enough to deter the support on the side of the Leviathans. Neutral objective spawn on the right-hand side, Pyromancer and Fire Giant both available, but Yarkor, bringing that solo lane identity into the dual lane, has decided not to rotate out just yet. Instead, wants to take this 1v1 up against Cyclone Spin, and let that be a mark of how Cyclone Spin is already starting to respect this new ADC on the side of Leviathans. Mans decides he'd just rather sit in his tower.
Look, Yarkor in just individual
take
duels has been doing half of Cyclone Spin's HP. Here we go. Cyclone Spin hits in on the ultimate. Yarkor from range. Desert Fury. Neither of the hunters die. That's a 2-level deficit for Cyclone Spin, and he nearly wins it. Perfectly played. I know you hate it, Myth, but by both there, I suppose, to stay alive. That's what I'm looking at. That Yarkor and Cyclone Spin kept themselves alive and nearly turned around the kills onto one another. But neither hunter goes down by the end.
Yeah, well, Cyclone Spin nearly does turn around the kill with the assistance of his entire minion wave and a tier 1 tower after Yarkor jumps in aggressively. But at the end of the day, I think that you could say that Cyclone Spin does come out ahead in that engagement because he strips away one of Yarkor's defensive relics. That bead's going to be down for the next 2 minutes, means that if Scary D finds an opportunity, could rotate over and potentially find a gank over there. But so far, Yarkor has been allowed to do just about anything that he wants. He's been jumping in every single wave and has yet to be punished for it.
That's right. Yarkor happy to take those 1v1s. I was hoping finally we'd see a solo kill out of it. It's been a lot of that, what we just saw, where Cyclone Spin loses half of his health but is able to stay alive by the end of it. And Cyclone Spin did a little bit more than that, as we mentioned, nearly getting the solo kill. Over onto Yarkor. Skirmish between the solo laners as Shinto has to thunder crash away. Paul backs away. Benji and Julio really showing their face on the left side of the map for the first time so far this game. Rongyu has Blink, has Stygian Torment, has Sunder. So depending on what target all of that goes on to, could be one very quick death here. And Myth, Seems like we're quickly approaching our Oni Fury dance 20 minutes into this game. Unless the Tartarus Titans want to force the issue.
Defensive positioning is afforded to the Titans here, but all the vision going the way of the Leviathans, those Oracles. Uncontestable vision at this point, so the Leviathans don't have to show up just yet. They know for a fact the Titans have not started it. Instead, it's going to be a 1v1 in mid, and Panatom gets bullied out by Benji, dropped to 50% and sent back to base. This is an opportunity for the Titans to potentially pull the Gold Fury itself.
And the 100% kill participation player is no longer here for the Oni Fury. He'll be back shortly. Speed up, it's going to take a little bit of time. Oni Fury is there, stunned down onto Julio, and the Leviathans steal it away. It looked like Desert Fury from Rongyu, but the top left of your screen will give you confirmation here in just a moment, and it was, Yarkor with the Desert Fury who ended up stealing it. Seems like nothing is going right now for the Tartarus Titans. You buy your time, you have the 4v5, and Yarkor will just strip it away.
With 191 damage, by the way, but that's one of the downsides of having an unorthodox mage inside of your draft. Zhongqi, again, should not lose confirmation up against that. That's just an unlucky scenario. He's definitely got the hardest hitting ability in range of the Gold Fury, but tough one there. Gold Fury goes the way of the Leviathans. Gold lead going the way of the Leviathans as well. 5,000 in favor of the Chaos team, and in a situation really where the Titans had all the chips on their side, all the cards on their side as well. No grouping from the Order side team means that another neutral objective could go the way of the Leviathans again. Pyromancer down to 30%. No defense from the Titans. That's yet another objective. Might as well go for the Fire Giant at this rate.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Shinto takes over to level 20, first to do so in the game. That means his starter item has been upgraded. A couple members of the Titans lagging behind their counterparts on the race. 3 levels behind for Paul out of the mid lane. Early engage from Rongyu here won't result in much, but Benji has to leave. There's the aggressive Thunder Crash from Shinto. And wouldn't you guess it, he's rampaging through this game. Yarkor gets the second of the fight, and the Leviathans will not be denied. Could be a third on the menu.
Scary D steps back forward, but fortunately is able to avoid the ultimate from Julio. If he gets hit there, likely loses his life. Instead, only loses the tier 2 tower, as well as 2 of his friends, Benji and Aurora, are going to be watching from the grayscale screen for the next half a minute or so. Leviathans, almost as a consolation prize, can you hear the sarcasm dripping in my voice, back up to the Fire Giant, and they should be able to take it for free. Tartarus Titans, nowhere on the defense, and they make the right call this time around. No way can they step up 3 versus 5.
Miff, I don't think you've ever been sarcastic a day in your life. I don't know what you're talking about there. I've never heard
now
that
you're
tone
doing
of
it.
voice out of you. What? Me? Sarcastic?
Now you're doing the sarcasm. Yeah. Oh my God,
no,
Dave.
no,
Come-
no, none
Cast
of
the
that.
game, Dave. Cast the game.
Well, what are we going to look at here, Mifflin? What, tier 2 towers go down, the Titans try to defend their Phoenixes? Actually, if we want to try to get back to some actual analysis, you have to look back, I think, to
Pointing at
game
me?
1. And the what's that?
No, you want some analysis, huh? I'll give you some.
That's
All right,
right, yeah.
fine. I'll
Chair
analyze
2,
the game, Dave.
Go ahead, Chair
The
2.
game
give me some more,
simplifies once you have to defend your base. These tier 2 towers could be one of the opportunities for the Titans to really put up a hard defense, especially considering how their
They
draft
did in
looks.
game 1.
I've been knocking it here that the unorthodox mage does make it a little bit more difficult inside of these team fights, but with this quadruple dive composition, it should be pretty easy. The plan is simple for the Titans. Once the fight starts, everyone press 4 and hold down the W key and try and beeline it to Shinto or Yarkor in the backline. Use your pieces as their best use. So far, we haven't seen it from the Titans, but I think now is going to be their potentially last opportunity to do it.
Remember, the Titans on the left side, Phoenix, did a whole lot of nothing trying to defend the bird there in game number 1. Aurora, not happy with that. He's going to blink into the back line. Benji starts off this defense, but he'll back away here as well. Panatom lurking by the separator there. Can get over that wall if he wanted to. No split here. It's a full 5 strong from the Leviathan. Strength in numbers from this Leviathan squad, trying to keep Titans all together there as well. Lots of cleave damage, as we've talked about, from this Leviathan's team to melt through some of those priority targets. Minion wave works its way in. Stygian Torment from Rongyu onto the backline, but it's immediately stunned out, and Paul will survive and push back the initial onslaught. But look at Panatom. The health bars are missing. The Leviathans have found their opening. It's a double kill from Julio. Panatom has gotten
nice.
one as well onto Benji into the fountain, and Aurora will take the consolation prize, but it's Aurora, it's Scary D against 4 members of the Leviathans.
Yeah, 4 healthy members of the Leviathans. Scary D, no ultimate available, dropped down to 50%, goes back to the fountain, but exposes his Titan.
That's gotta be it here, Mifflin. You gotta think it is the Leviathans feeling healthy enough, damaging enough to turn their eyes towards the Titans. Scary D will be the final one to go down in this game unless Aurora makes the next. But the Titan will fall, the final casualty. The Leviathans take this 1 and 2.
Did you see that, Dave? Yarkor ignores the Titan, and his team enables that behavior. They all stopped hitting it just so they could watch Yarkor shoot a fish in a barrel, essentially. Tough loss for the Tartarus Titans. Clearly, they have not found their identity as a team yet, but this is a squad that I think that the casters and the fans at home can absolutely have faith is going to get their stuff together soon. They can certainly be the super team that they're expected to be.
Right, it's a late game team comp, right? The Titans, the way they've constructed this roster, where we're early on, they need a little time to get together, and then eventually, I'm not talking about this individual game, I'm talking the roster of the Titans is a late season team comp. I guess.
Okay,
that
I got you.
Connects now, Mifflin. Right, sarcasm is your strong suit. Humor, maybe not so much there, Miff. We're going to take a quick break after the Leviathans take this 1-2-0.
Welcome back to the SPL. Got to make sure we give those shout-outs to the Leviathans off a big win, finding it 2-0 in a rather convincing manner. Before we get too much into breaking all of that down, though, I want to make sure that I remind you all that if you want to rep your favorite league, the SPL, then you absolutely can, thanks to Insight Apparel, who is the official merch sponsor for the SPL. Now check out the young man Voog, that's what I'm going to go with here for you, bud. Looking good, though, all the same in the SMITE Pro League sweatshirt. Why don't you grab one and look good? And you know what? You know, make me happy. John Finch, don't you guys want to do that? Don't you want to make me proud? Check them out, though. That's at shop.smiteproleague.com. You can go grab your own stuff. Now, Gore, we got to talk a little bit here about, shop.smiteproleague.com. I nailed that. Yeah, absolutely. Gore, we got to talk a little bit, though, about this big win for the Leviathans, right? You saw a really, really aggressive draft coming out the other side from the Titans. I mean, 3 Warriors getting involved in that game right from the beginning, but still, I think, struggling a bit to get enough of a lead to beat that eventual Leviathans late game.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? They had a very good early game, but the Leviathans have just been a better late game team always. Like, I mean, that's just one of the things they've had. That's their strength. That's where they live, is for those late game team fights. But at the same time, even with the early game pressure, Scary D, I had highlighted to you, I said he's having a much better early game. It didn't translate to much in the end of it, and that's always been this conversation around, especially early game kills. It's what you can do with that pressure, right? It's not just can you get them. Yeah, that's awesome. Being able to wipe out the support 6 times in a row is really cool, and putting them at a level deficit is awesome, but if you can't find objectives off of it, towers off of it, things like that, it really doesn't mean anything for your team to get that lead unless you can start to build upon it. So even while you're looking at this, 11 minutes in, 5-5, there's not much of a difference between these two teams, and that's really where it started to slow down for the Titans. I mean, you had a lead to maybe play with, a lot of brawls to force out, and what should have been a focus for early game fights, but Yarkor was having none of it, Julio was having none of it, hell, I mean, Shinto for sure was having none of it. These players
He had a great
just
game, yeah.
set themselves up to find success here, and I've got to give the props out again. I think Shinto this time around looked really, really great game as Raijin, very similar to last week when he played Persephone. But Yarkor is the one that keeps stealing my heart with these games. Like, it's one thing, like Cyclone, I think there was a point where Mifflin had said was showing respect to Yarkor, wasn't leaving the tower line, was making sure, like, and recognizing, you know what, I'm not winning this fight. Yarkor jumped in on him at that time, like almost right after Mifflin says that, and that's the kind of play I'm really enjoying out of it. Yarkor had, I want to call it almost a disrespect, like that solo laner mentality of I can beat you and I know I can, and he's brought it to the carry, and I really like the way that he's been able to personify this. Him, Shinto, Panatom had a really good game, a really good set here, but Yarkor's switch to carry has definitely been just enticing viewing experience.
Yeah, Yarkor, with a little bit of ADC experience way back in the old days, looking like he's plenty comfortable back in it now. And it is indeed Yarkor that we have standing by for the post-game interview.
That's right, Yarkor is with me, fresh off a 2-0 over the Tartarus Titans. Yarkor, start me off your old role. Julio comes in, makes an immediate impact on this team. Now we've gotten to see him and the phenomenal games he's had through a couple. Talk to me a little bit about Julio, the growth you've seen, and what he brings to this team.
I think he just fixed a position that we needed. Like when we made a change, we need someone to play the role, and I think he's really good at it. He just do his job and even more, and we are so happy with that.
Yeah, right. His job would have been acceptable had it been kind of slow going, and then eventually he gets into it. But he's made a difference right away, carrying a lot of the weight here in a couple of these games. Over to you, though. You make a role swap. We talked to you early on before the season started. You said it would be a somewhat easy swap for you, and now you're feeling confident enough to take on Cyclone Spin in some 1v1s. So give me your thoughts about where you're at currently in your swap from solo to hunter. Do you feel like you're right up there with some of the best in the league?
Yeah, I feel that right now I'm gonna try to beat them all. I'm gonna try to beat the best, and everyone that is in the way is gonna lose. So maybe they're not in the way this time.
Hey, fair enough. You've taken out two pretty prominent names out of that hunter role. Your next matchup later on this weekend, this is a pretty good springboard here. You're going up against the Camelot Kings, and that hunter matchup will be you versus Netrioid. When you go into that matchup, is there anything extra in for it for you, or is it just another game and you're going to focus on your game plan, not so much worried about going up against Netrioid?
It will be just playing the game again. Just try to be smarter. I don't know. Just try to be better.
Right.
Just do the right plays at the right time, make the right decision. We just make it simple. We do the same every single time we play. Everyone know what we're gonna do, and people still lose. So I don't know. Hopefully one day they figure it out.
Yeah, they haven't figured it out yet, Yarkor. I can't wait. That's our matchup of the week, by the way. You guys versus the Kings later on. That's on Sunday. So we'll talk to you a little bit then. Best of luck in that one. Thanks for sitting down in the desk. We'll finish out the day.
Whew, I am currently a proud Leviathans stan. Yarkor saying, listen, we're doing the same thing and still nobody knows how to stop it. If you're in my way, I'm beating you. That's all there is to it. Gotta love the confidence, especially as long as they're able to back it up as they currently are right now, Gormizer. This is an impressive team. I think you gotta look out for them right now because they haven't let anyone slow them down.
I mean, it's the same thing they were doing last year, right? They're going to come in. They're going to, like, admittedly, I think they're a little more versatile. I'd said this earlier, but they're going to pick the meta gods, and they're going to beat you with them, and that's just the play. That's the MO. That's just the way they did it for most majority of the year last year. It took until, what, midway through Phase 2 before we started seeing things slip up for them. I wouldn't be surprised if things keep going the way they are right now. If it's really a Leviathans, Dragons, maybe a little Kings up there fighting for those top spots. It depends on how the rest of this week goes. The Dragons, I mean, especially after the way the Titans played today, don't seem like they're going to be hitting a lot other than maybe a bump on their climb up towards the top. The Leviathans having to deal with the Kings on Sunday, maybe having a little more trouble maintaining a perfect score.
The Warriors going to have to bounce back from a tough loss that they had earlier today. The Valkyries, the Titans as well, going to have to somehow regroup from fighting the 1-2-0 team to fight another 2-0 team on Saturday up against the Dragons. It does not seem like a fun schedule for them right now up against our current top two teams. Then I can't wait to see if the Bolts or the Valkyries can keep their current streaks going when they play on Sunday. A lot of good games lined up for us right now on this schedule. Means that you cannot afford to miss any of them. At the very least, make sure you're going back and watching them if you can't be there in real time, but be here with us live because you know you can't afford to miss any of these matches.
Look, after today, I'm feeling way more confident. I was the only person who had the Valkyries down versus the Bolts on Sunday, and after watching what they were able to do in set one, I'm feeling way more confident in that vote. Like, last week, again, it was kind of a coin flip. I'm really excited to see how that one goes. But tomorrow, that's a big one. Like, the Scarabs definitely need to, I think, find a more solid win than what they had up against the Valkyries. There's a lot of fun SBL still happening this weekend.
Well, we really appreciate you all watching. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 11. That's the SCC game. Then at 1, we'll be getting started with all the SPL that you know and love. So appreciate y'all. We'll make sure that we see you next time for more SMITE.